You're probably wondering what on earth, or indeed in heaven, is going on here. In fact, it's the very ancient rite of measuring a statue at a great pilgrimage site here in West Cork. The site is at Ballyvourney, and I set out with a very good friend in the car that I own jointly with my son, a 95 Astra. Neither of our electric vehicles being available or suitable on the day. The occasion was the feast day, the patron or patron day of Saint Gobnait on the 11th of February. It was good to be back here. Saint Gobnait, patron saint of beekeepers and smiths, has been venerated here in Ballyvourney for 1500 years. And although many of the practices have changed over the years, there are still strong elements of the originals, robust and earthy. But today, of course, it is predominantly a Christian site, and almost all of the utterances of the pilgrims are guided by the Christian Catholic Church. Gomani dia with a gobnait neva, gomiani murigwith, is banin fendit, is kuitsa honig geran maskelat, a dirig maleish or Sunday. It translates as, may God and Mary bless you, O holy Gobnait. And I bless you too, and I come to you with my complaint. Please cure me, for God's sake. About a mile outside the village of Ballyvourney is the main site of the pilgrimage. In this area, you have what's called St. Gobnait's house. You also have her grave. You have St. Gobnait's church. And you have the site of the priest's grave. And then you have the famous or infamous part of the church wall in which is contained the bulla. We'll come to that shortly. There is a figure, a female figure, over this lancet window. It's quite small and cuddly, but it belongs to a series of carvings called Sheila na Gig, with which I am much associated with, but maybe in later videos. Here in Ballyvourney, it's the practice to rub the ribbon which has been measured at the statue in the church over the figure, and there is a fertility, or maybe it's a cure against barrenness. Anyway, this is the practice here, and also at many other of the more than 80 Sheila na Gig sites throughout the country. But as I said, Sin Scéal Ella, a story for another time. This is a picture of me taken here in Ballyvourney by a very famous photographer called Alice Tomlinson. I think she won Sony of the Year in 2000, Photographer of the Year in 2018. Anyway, we got talking and I explained myself to her, and she decided to pose me as a typical pilgrim. Although, in fact, I am totally non-practicing Christian, and I would regard myself as terribly interested in religion and religious practices, and particularly our wonderful Irish heritage in this area. But I am just, or maybe I shouldn't be so apologetic, I am an amateur historian and amateur archaeologist, anthropologist, or whatever. And I was a farmer. Now, this is a part of the rounds that I particularly like, and I would like to venture that it is really the most extraordinary and the most unique part of the pilgrimage practices on the site. At arm's length within that rectangular hole is a polished ball of either stone or iron. I used to think it was smaller, but it's about the size of a medium-sized cannonball. St. Gobnait's bulla features in some of the very colourful and perhaps very ancient stories of her using this round cannonball-like object to destroy a castle being built, a hostile castle being built on a neighbouring hill. And it was rumoured, or the story goes, that she cast the ball towards the castle every evening and destroyed all the work of the day until finally the hostiles, if you like, gave up the practice altogether. And but there's also a bit of a killjoy sort of story where she objected to some youths playing bulla or bowls, I suppose, the modern bowls, road bowling, on a Sunday, and she cast the ball, the ball into the wall so that they couldn't get access to it. A debate goes on as to whether the ball is made of iron or made of stone. One description describes it as a smooth agate stone. And another story about the lynches of Ballyvourney describes it as being an iron ball found in a graveyard in the 19th century and then implanted in the wall. I think it's a case of take or pick. Of course, Ballyvourney is in the Gaeltacht area, and many people are very, very fluent in Irish, and you'd hear the lovely bloss of Munster Irish all around you. My Irish is not so good, but I could imagine that some of the people are talking about the wonderful legend of the 9 white deer that marked the spot where Gobnait should stop and found her nunnery. The pilgrimage, or the rounds of St. Gobnait, in Irish, Torres Gobnaitan, finish up at the well on the roadside outside the main site. And here is a tree pointed out by my companion to be a linden or lime tree, is hung with offerings, either in thanks for cures or looking for cures for ailments. And it's typical of the rag bush tradition throughout the country. We even have one down the road from us in Castletown Bear. Looking a little bit draggled these days, but still the tradition lives, and I'm sure that bush will flourish once more. And I shall set the ball rolling by hanging a piece of blue ribbon that was measured, in other words, blessed, at the statue of St. Gobnait last Saturday. This has not been a comprehensive documentary about St. Gobnait. I would aspire to doing something in much more detail, but I think I'm going to pay quite a few visits to the place still. And in fact, I might be much more organised next year with cameras, recording equipment, and travel with a group of interested friends on the feast day of February the 11th. One last visit to the church, one last look at the statue. It is said that there are traces of 5 different
I was just talking to the priest
colours.
about, and he says it was carbon dated to
I missed recording that last bit there, but basically the priest maintained that the statue was carbon 14 dated. Now, I doubt this, but anyway, according to him, it was dated to the 12th to 13th century. And again, the question I would have raised, he says that it was not bog oak. Of course, if it was bog oak, the wood itself would be dated to several thousand years BC. And so, once more, a question mark. I asked the priest about the lay family who were caretakers of the statue for many hundreds of years, and he didn't know their name. But anyway, I checked up on it later. It seems it was the O'Herlihy family who finally gave it up to the church in the 1840s. A lot of the practices of these sort of pilgrimages at Ballyvourney and elsewhere have not sat easily with the Catholic Church, and there has often been conflict, and there would still be a bit of conflict today in Ballyvourney, but not as bad as it used to be. The Saint Gobnait established a church in West Kerry in Dunqueen, and one of the Blasket Islanders recounts a story of a new parish priest coming in and being very upset at the 3-day extent of the St. Gobnait's feast day celebrations. And of course, on those pattern days, it was a major, major celebration for the whole community, and it involved matchmaking, it involved drinking, it involved dealing in cattle and other goods, and I'm sure there was plenty of debauchery and lechery, as the church would have described it. And should the poor things, wouldn't they be welcome to it? But the parish priest wasn't getting the people to bend to his will, so he threatened the whole shooting gallery with excommunication. And they threw him over a cliff. So the story goes. There is so much more to research and to relate, and an awful lot to speculate, if you like, about the healing properties of great traditional old sites and saints like this. And for the last few minutes, as I've been telling the stories, I've been showing you a selection of some references on this subject. I have many more, and if anybody did want to go very deeply into the whole thing, I could facilitate that. Okay, Shinna will for now.